A fine group of bumphead parrotfish quietly guide us in the depths of Bali to the south of Indonesia. At shallower levels, nearer the island, loose substrata dominates. Volcanic sands rich in organic material. There, perfectly adapted organisms live. The smallest invertebrates are the champions at using this plentiful material. And the fish come along, attracted by their big numbers. Corals like this Acropora stand out in the seascape as they take over loose boulders in the sand, creating isolated colonies. These have charisma and encourage the development of other coral species and rocky substrata-loving organisms. It's sometimes possible to pinpoint isolated Gorgonia colonies in the soft surface. They are always to be found where currents exist. Among their branches, perfectly camouflaged, hiding, almost invisible, is the pygmy seahorse. But the most exposed zones around Bali are battered non-stop by heavy currents. Here, it's difficult for the corals to form real reefs, and they grow, forming more or less dense groups, depending on wave exposure and the currents. Seeking shelter from the current, the fish look to the rocky structures as a solution. A little farther away, among the small islands to the southeast of Bali, we can find abrupt, almost vertical walls where nutrient-loaded cold waters ascend from the depths. This is the pelagic kingdom. Some come here for the abundance of plankton, and others for the fish that feed on it. But if the diversity of environments near Bali wasn't enough, we always have the wrecks, sunken and hiding a secret. One of them is this American cargo vessel sent to the bottom in the Second World War. As time passes, the mass of twisted steel comes alive, attracting all manner of species which need a stable substrata to thrive, a place to shelter, and a place to hunt too. Sunken wrecks on sandy beds increase ecosystem complexity, generating new environments. The species sort themselves out according to current direction, light, particle deposit, or even substrata quality. In such a rich and species-diverse sea like Bali's, a wreck turns into a great place for a nearly infinite concentration of biodiversity. And on this wreck, the bumphead parrots do very well. This is their nighttime accommodation. Between the Indian Ocean and the Sea of Java is one of the loveliest islands of the Indonesian archipelago. Java is our destination, between Sumatra and Lombok. Bali isn't big, barely 140 kilometers long and 90 wide, but it has everything Westerners consider to be a tropical paradise. White sandy beaches, exuberant forests, unique culture and tradition, and extremely welcoming locals. What more can you ask for? The known history of Bali began with the arrival of the Hindus around 100 BC. With the Muslim invasion of much of Indonesia around the 16th century, many of the Indonesian Hindus sought refuge in Bali, where they managed to stay faithful to their creed and culture. And so the Kingdom of Bali was born, stable, until the Dutch arrived, first to set up trade relations, and then to conquer and colonize the place in the mid-19th century. The conquest, heavily criticized by Western powers at the time, was cruel and virulent. So much so that the Dutch were obliged to give some power to the natives of Bali. But Dutch dominion didn't last long anyway, because the Japanese occupied the island during the Second World War. After Japan was defeated and the war ended, the Netherlands tried to wrestle back control of the island, but nationalist feeling was just too much. In 1948, the Republic of Eastern Indonesia, with Bali forming a part, was, as an independent state, created. Most of the island's inhabitants work in agriculture, mainly rice production. Other products like coffee, fruit and vegetables are grown, but in smaller quantities. The capital is Denser Pa, and the island's population is a little more than 3 million. As in many other areas in this corner of the world, the population is very young, and the activity in the towns and cities is frenetic, even more so around the many markets of the capital. If you're in the city centre, the ideal thing is to visit one of its two markets, Badung or Kumbasari. You can buy everything from craftwork to wickerwork, spices or fruit, and as in all these countries around here, clothes or electronic goods. It's a must to stroll around the market stalls if you are a tourist recently arrived, and it's a great way to get to know about the daily life of the Bali people. An old wooden dike installed on the sand is perfect refuge for thousands of cardinal fish. During the day, they group together in sheltered spots, but as night falls, they break up and go hunting for small invertebrates. On the posts keeping the structure together, some stenopus shrimps. They're normally timid and shy, but don't seem ill at ease here. Not far from the dike, buried in the sand, a crocodile eel shows only its head. It feeds on fish and cephalopods, which it ambushes. This Heteractis anemone is home to a single Periclemene shrimp. Like most of the sand dwellers, these anemone are able to bury themselves if threatened. A team of bannerfish swim near the bottom, looking for plankton. We now have a look at a curious-looking seafloor which has caught our eye. The sand is covered by things looking like thimbles. These things should be, in theory anyway, buried in the sand, given its loose nature. But nature is wise indeed. In reality, we are seeing two species of solitary coral belonging to the Heterocyathus and Heterapsamia genus. They live associated to a small worm living at the base of the skeleton and is in charge of pushing the coral up so that it doesn't get buried. Next door, a fine-sized anemone. Apart from the usual guests, the clownfish, other stranger creatures are in residence. They are porcelain crabs, excellent water filterers, responsible for cleaning the anemone of noxious particles. It catches food with its modified appendages. Another weirdo is this head belonging to a rare Calichelys genus snake eel. Most of this species comes out to hunt at night and spend the day at rest under the sand. Their rigid tail helps them to bury themselves backwards. Swimming near the coast and at the interface between an old reef slope and the sandy substrata, we view a spectacular group of rays. They've got together for reproduction, probably. Meeting up in numbers is more efficient for finding a mate. Although the side we are looking at is poor in coral, it does have some special ecological features, allowing for the existence of many a strange dweller. Under some stones, a moray eel hides. The lack of light favors the growth of encrusting calcareous algae on the surface of more protected rock, where particle deposition is more difficult. A small cavity reveals a mass of shrimps known commonly as Durban shrimp. This grouping up is not unusual and often occurs when a predator's nearby. In this case, the moray eel. They take advantage of the leftovers when the predator has finished. A few meters on, these fine Nudibranchae chromodoris are starting their mating ritual. They belong to a species which is simultaneous hermaphrodite. That means they are male and female at the same time. Each one will fertilize the other's eggs, but they can't fertilize themselves as the male and female sex organs are isolated. So, this way, sexual production becomes more efficient. And in another corner of the same rocks, we come across this leaf fish. Its more than brilliant camouflage makes it invisible. The shrimps don't feel any danger and approach to clean it. It's waiting for a bigger victim, maybe a cardinal fish that gets too close. Many of these tiny shrimps are transparent. This is a strategy for not being seen by predators. The staining pattern usually makes it complex to make out the body shape. The female carries its eggs in the abdomen, which they oxygenate now and again by flapping their appendages. The rocks and pebbles strewn around on the bed are meeting places for many an odd species. One is this Astenosoma urchin. Its spines, small and seemingly harmless, are poisonous and can be very uncomfortable if they inject their venom. On top, a minute Coleman shrimp lives. It only lives on this kind of urchin, and no other. The Periclemines colemani, as it is known to scientists, clean a piece of the urchin and stay on to live there. The size, colour and hiding place makes it exceedingly difficult to find, both for us or the enemy. Another group of rocks nearby, different Isidius species, among them some of the Rhopalaea genus. Their appearance is deceptive, but they are animals with complex nervous, digestive and circulatory systems, transparent though they are. These shrimps of the Stenopus genus include some simultaneous hermaphrodite species, a strange case among the crustaceans. One of them is the amboin, an expert cleaner specializing in big grouper and moray eels. Isolated in the sand and in shallow water, denser and healthier coral groups prosper. And there, the bannerfish search for the anemone, one of their favorite foods. The dominating coral is Plerigyra simplex, also known as bubble coral. They colonize shallow but shaded zones with muddy water. During the day, they take on a lobed look, but at night, the tentacles come out. This is a perfect place for the turtles, what with all the coral around. They spend their time chomping the coral, indifferent to everything around them. Dashing the coral seascape, some colourful, eye-catching gorgonia. This one hides a secret, but it's difficult to discover. We get as close as we can. Something tiny moves among the branches. Yes, it's a pygmy seahorse. It's a tiny fish, so apparently fragile, it would seem impossible for it to survive on this reef with so many enemies. The brilliant camouflage is its only friend. Swimming between the wall and the sand, we get to a strange rocky outcrop. At first, we ask if it might be one of the famous artificial reefs created by the islanders to increase fishing stocks. None of that. To our amazement, it's a sunken Hindu temple. The people of Bali are faithful to their gods and build underwater temples. The soft coral has overgrown around, making it difficult to make out the temple structure. It's now home to fish and other sea creatures. This deep religious feeling of the Bali people we witnessed underwater is evident all around the island. Unlike the rest of Indonesia, which is mainly Muslim, the majority of the Bali people are Hindus. The Muslims, a minority, live mainly on the coast. But Hinduism in Bali isn't like that in India. Here, it's a complex mix of Hinduism, old rites of ancient cults and animistic thought. All is based around a series of rituals and festivals marking stages of life up to death. Every day, a constant flux of offerings done in order and with specific intention. If not, the Bali universe loses its equilibrium. The relationship with religion is such that Bali is known as the Island of the Gods, or the 1,000 Temples. Definitely more than 1,000, because every household has one, big or small, depending on their spending power. And there is where the daily offerings take place. But other huge, beautiful temples soar next to the family ones, where the Bali people go for their most important festivals and ceremonies. Is one of the most awesome. It was built on some small islands on a crater lake of Bratton Mountain. It is dedicated to Dewi Danu, the goddess of water. The pilgrims come here for their ceremonies and rituals and ask the gods for water to maintain their crops. Most visited, though, by locals and travellers alike, is the temple of Pura Tanah Lot. On the seaside, it can only be accessed at low tide. Things get lively again then. It is one of the most beautiful Hindu buildings on the island of Bali. Built in the 16th century, it still receives masses of pilgrims who come here for their faith or the ancient legends which awake a certain curiosity. One popular legend says that between the rocks on which the temple is built, thousands of snakes live, protecting this sacred place from intruders. We dive straight to a famous Bali wreck, the Liberty, an American cargo vessel from the Second World War. Although it was torpedoed by a Japanese submarine in 1942, it didn't sink and was salvaged up to the beach where it was unloaded. But in 1963, due to an earthquake, it sank into the quicksands, where it lies today. Among the species living in this twisted mass of metal, the bumphead parrotfish stand out, especially at dawn and dusk. The nicest attraction here. But they are an ever more rare species, because the Asian market loves their meat. They can weigh up to 50 kilos and live more than 40 years. This is the largest parrotfish species in the world. This wreck has been colonized by a multitude of species just like the nearby coral reefs, but they have both suffered the effects of global warming and the Niño. Live animal cover is reduced. But it is still spectacular, and a myriad of sea communities bloom. The scorpionfish adapt their colour to the mass of shapes and colours around. These here copy the lovely tones and hues of the many sponges and ascidia nearby. The moray eel likes the wrecks too. Here they can find pipes and crannies to hide in and feel safe. Besides, there's sure to be prey in there, which they'll find as night falls. Others awaiting nightfall are the spotted manta rays. Meanwhile, this one rests quietly under some metal sheets. This odd character is a batfish. Though it feeds on plankton and invertebrate, it's been discovered recently they also consume macroalgae. This is relevant since they carry out a role key in the ecosystem. They eat algae that other herbivores don't. That way, the corals develop and degraded environments recover. In the shadowy, slightly protected areas of the wreck, great gorgonia and black coral colonies grow, hanging from the roof. A spectacular, maze-like view. The commercial fish, like the red sea bream, take a break from the current in the twisted iron. The wreck's position on the sandy bed makes it vulnerable to superficial currents, which are usually strong. Leeward to the current, the black corals find the perfect space. And then the coral branches create the perfect habitat for the cardinals. But several different species can share the same coral, as we can see here. But the species are fairly demanding in terms of the environment they want. Those occupying the black corals, then, are not found in nooks or crannies or in other corals and vice versa. This is basic and is one of the main reasons for such high species diversity in these seas.